The NBA is a star-driven league. If there's one thing we like to do as basketball fans, it's rank the top players. Now, oftentimes on a broadcast or a basketball show, I'll hear someone throw out a claim like, that guy's a top 10 player, or that guy's a top 5 player. And I think to myself, but are they really? There's lots of good players in the NBA, so today I thought I'd rank the top 25 players I'd want on my team for the second half of the 24-25 season. Now, before we get started, I wanted to put out some criteria. This is a list solely based off the second half of the season and including playoffs. So it's not a list of who's been the MVP so far this year or who I would want for the next 10 years. The two most important factors to me were, can this person be the best player on a team that has a lot of postseason success, and how are they consistently? Do they show up on a night-to-night basis, and are they available to play, or do they have an injury-prone history? I also tried to balance my evaluation based off how they've looked so far this season and also their playoff resume, whether they've won titles or they've disappointed in the playoffs. This list was very difficult to come up with. I know most people would disagree on the top 5, much less the top 25, so let me know down in the comments where you agree and disagree with my list. That being said, there were a lot of players I thought I would have on here that ended up landing outside the top 25, so I'd like to start with some honorable mentions. In no particular order, I have Bam Adebayo, Jalen Williams, Kawhi Leonard, Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton, Damian Lillard, Franz Wagner, Domantas Sabonis, Alperen Sengun, and Jalen Green. Number 25, James Harden. Many people, including myself, thought Harden and the Clippers would take a step back this year. Especially with Kawhi Leonard missing the majority of the first half of the season, it's been a surprise that Harden has been able to carry the Clippers to a 24-17 record and good for 5th best team in the West. While he's not putting up the crazy numbers he did earlier in his career, he's averaging about 21 points and 8 assists a game, which isn't bad for a 35-year-old point guard. However, he is shooting under 40% for the first time in his career, albeit just below it at 39%. Things may be going better than expected, but I'm not expecting any postseason success from Harden or the Clippers. Number 24, Trey Young. Ice Trey is the leader of that young, fun Atlanta Hawks team. They have a lot of good young players on the team. I really like Jalen Johnson. He probably should have been in my honorable mention list, just showing how deep the league is. Trey Young this year is averaging the second least amount of shots he's taken, the least since his rookie year, but he has a career high assist total that leads the NBA at 11.8 a game. Their offense is super fun to watch when Trey is taking the ball to the hoop and throwing lobs to Capella and Okongwu, or shooting that little floater that he has that seems to always go in. The one thing that drives me crazy about his game, other than his defense, is when he shoots those pull-up 30-foot threes. It's just not the best shot for him. He thinks he's Steph Curry sometimes, but only shoots 34% from 3. Number 23, Kyrie Irving. I've loved watching the Kyrie Irving renaissance in Dallas the past 2 years. A lot of people had given up on him as a player that would make an impact on the final stage like he did. Although he didn't have the greatest finals, he showed what he can do in the postseason, helping the Mavericks win the Western Conference last year. We've still never seen another guard that can finish the way he can around the hoop and also shoot 40% from 3. Mavericks have had to overcome not having Luka Donic for a chunk of games so far, but in the games Kyrie's played without Luka, he's led the Mavericks to an 8-5 record. Number 22, DeAaron Fox. While not as accomplished as some of the other guys on this list, Fox is hitting his prime at 27 years old. Things were looking rough for the Kings a few weeks ago, and Fox was the only guy on this list that was seriously floated around in trade rumors so far this year. The Kings have rebounded since firing Mike Brown and hiring Doug Christie, going 9-2 in their last 11 games. I personally hope Fox does still get traded, as he's kind of wasting away over there in Sacramento. I'm sure Kings fans would disagree, as they would hate to lose a player as talented as De'Aaron Fox, knowing that they don't attract a lot of free agents there. But imagine teaming Fox with a guy like Wemby or another young superstar. It would really unlock him as the second best guy on a team. Number 21, Tyrese Maxiell. So, in all honesty, I am a Sixers fan, so this may be a little bit of a homer pick, but I'm going to explain to you why Maxiell deserves to be ahead of the 4 guys previously listed. He's averaging 26 points per game this year, which outscores this version of Harden. He hit a bunch of clutch shots in that Knicks series last year in the playoffs, showing that he has that clutch gene just like Trey Young. While not quite at that Kyrie level, he's one of the best finishing guards we have in the game, and he may be the second fastest player in the NBA behind DeAaron Fox. So I could argue he could either match or come close to matching the strength of every player ranked 22 through 25. The downside for Maxey is he's on the Sixers team that's having the year from hell. But even if you dislike Embiid, Paul George, and the Sixers, nobody can hate on Tyrese Maxiell. Number 20, Paulo Barrera. The best player on one of the most promising young teams in the league. Banchero's in his third year now and averaging 25 points per game. He's missed most of the year so far with injury, and the Magic did pretty well in his absence. Franz Wagner stepped up before getting hurt himself, and Jalen Suggs has played well all year carrying that Magic team. Paulo reminds me a lot of Carmelo Anthony with maybe just a little bit of LeBron James thrown in there, maybe like an 80-20, 90-10 mixture. I'm interested to see what this Magic team looks like when they get their full roster back healthy. They're such a good defensive team, but in last year's playoff series against the Cavs, it's shown how much they rely on Banchero to be that number one creator and basically provide the offense for this team. And while he's done a good job at times, he's just not ready to carry that much of a burden yet. Number 19, Joel Embiid. This year has not been kind to Joel Embiid so far. He started the year out with a knee injury. He was suspended 3 games from an altercation with a reporter, got ejected from Young and official in one of the only 13 games he's played, and also had a sinus fracture, and big shocker, the knee injury is still bothering him. The number 19 is a big fall off from a guy that won MVP 2 years ago, but you really just can't trust Joel Embiid's availability. Even when he's out there, he's not the same guy he was a few years ago. He just doesn't rebound the same, he doesn't have that same lift, and he's always falling to the floor or grabbing his knee multiple times throughout the game. As a Sixers fan, I've loved watching him the past 9 years, but it may be time to admit that his best years are behind him. Number 18, Anthony Davis. This may seem a little too low for some people out there. Davis in some circles is regarded as a top 10 player in this league, but at this point in his career, I just don't see it. He's never been able to be the best player on a playoff team that made it out of the first round. And while he played in 76 games last year, a career high, I still don't trust his availability, especially in those big spots. He's still one of the best defensive players in the game, and you definitely can't discount that. But offensively, I don't think he's the same guy he used to be, and not on the level of a lot of the other superstars in the league. He hasn't shot consistently from 3 since that 2020 title season, and has never really been a dominant passer like Jokic or some of the other big men in this league. We've been hearing for years now that LeBron was going to pass the torch to Davis for this Lakers team, but the lack of success they've had has shown that never really happened. Number 17, Ja Morant. When Anthony Edwards was the breakout star of last postseason, I couldn't help but think that Ja Morant should have had a similar moment by now. Everybody knows about the injuries and off-the-court issues he's had, but now, in 2025, he's back to playing basketball, and the Grizzlies are looking like one of the best teams in the West. Right now, the Grizzlies are the 3 seed, and when Morant plays, they're one of the most exciting teams to watch. It's hard to trust them as a title contender so soon, due to the fact that they've had good regular seasons in the past but have come up short in postseasons. I'm not going to knock Morant for that yet. He's still young in his career, and he was going up against guys like Curry and LeBron, so you can't really blame him for those early playoff exits. One thing about this Grizzlies team, though, is they don't need Ja as much as in years past. He's only playing 28 minutes a game and has actually missed 18 games already this season, and the Grizzlies are 11-7 in his absence. I don't know if it's his postseason history, his missed games, or the fact that he plays in Memphis, but I feel like he doesn't get the shine he deserves, and a year from now we could be talking a lot more about Ja Morant. Number 16, Devin Booker. Devin Booker is only 28 years old, and yet it feels like he's had a full NBA career already. He's in his 10th season on the same team, has taken that team to the NBA Finals, and has also had a few disappointing playoff exits. During the preseason, the Suns felt like the sexy pick to have a great year in the Western Conference and potentially go back to the finals. But things haven't worked out that way, as they're still right around 500 halfway through the year. The good news for the Suns, though, they're 19-8 in games that Kevin Durant and Devin Booker play together, showing that if you have 2 top 20 guys, it still works, but the rest of the roster leaves a lot to be desired. Number 15, Donovan Mitchell. 15 seems really low for the best player on the best team in the NBA, but that's where I have Mitchell. I think last year in a video I mentioned that Donovan Mitchell could be the best player on a championship team, and I had some disagreement and some agreement. If Jayson Tatum could do it on a really good Celtics team, then maybe there's a path that the Cavs could do something similar with Donovan Mitchell and this core group of guys they have going for them now. He's had some good postseason performances in the past, dating back to when he was in Utah, and looked pretty good in his first year with the Cavs last year, helping them beat the Magic in the first round, and actually had some really good performances in that Celtics series before having to leave due to injury. One of the big questions still to be answered in this NBA season is, can the Cavs contend for a title without a super duper star? Or can Donovan Mitchell elevate his game to help them get to that point? Number 14, Kade Cunningham. Okay, so I wish I made a video like this last year, because for some time now I've been saying that Kade Cunningham is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. I live in Michigan, so I've been able to go to a few Pistons games over the past year, and just watching him in person is even more impressive than on TV. The amount of responsibility Kade has in the Pistons offense is only topped by guys like SGA, Luka, LeBron, Harden, but he is a huge central point of everything that they do. He's averaging 24.5 points and 9.5 assists, and has helped the Pistons, the worst team in the league last year, get to above 500 at this point halfway through. He's proven that he's one of the best passers in the NBA, and that sometimes makes you forget that he's 6'6", 220 pounds. Guys like Jokic and LeBron have made this seem less impressive, but please don't sleep on Kade Cunningham. Number 13, Karl-Anthony Towns. This season from Kade has shown how much your situation matters in people evaluating you as a high-level superstar. Oftentimes we wonder whether guys would be putting up numbers and successful everywhere, or if they're just part of a system and that's what's allowing them to look like a good player. Kade has definitely shown that he is that superstar no matter where he goes, and actually maybe Minnesota was holding him back a little, as he's even looked better on the Knicks, and they've improved while the Timberwolves have fallen back to a 500 team. He went from playing power forward in Minnesota next to Rudy Gobert to being a center for the Knicks, at least until Mitchell Robinson comes back. And although he's not the best rim protector, he's shown that he can take on the rebounding responsibilities of a center, finishing second in the NBA so far at 13.8 per game. Number 12, Kevin Durant. Durant's a guy that's been in the top 5 for forever. This is no knock on him considering that he's 36 years old at this point. He still looks like 90% of the Kevin Durant we know, but you can see a little bit that he's starting to age. Since coming back from his tear Achilles, he's only played 60 plus games one time in the 4 full seasons, and not quite sure he makes it there this year. Still, I often turn on League Pass to Phoenix just to watch Durant play, watch him post up on that elbow, get into his spots, pull up from 3, and also his defense I feel like has always been underrated for most of his career. I feel bad for KD having watched him these past few years, playing on different teams, different situations that have often ended in failure. Some of it is his own doing, but I feel like Phoenix is just asking too much of a 36-year-old KD to compete in his twilight years. Number 11, Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's the reigning Finals MVP, the most prestigious award I think there is in basketball. I think if you asked all NBA players, they would take that over winning the regular season MVP. Whether you think he deserved it or not, you can't deny that Brown stepped up on the big stage last year, and he never backs down to anyone in the league, and you gotta respect that about him too. I do wonder what he would look like on a different team other than the Celtics. Some nights he just kind of fades into the background if Tatum or Derek White or Porzingis is having a big night. But then there are those moments where Brown steps up and shows that he could be this leader of this team if needed. Maybe this is too much of recency bias just going off of his performance from last year's playoffs, but you gotta think in the foreseeable future, Brown's gonna have an opportunity on that big stage with the Celtics going deep into the playoffs, whereas some of these other guys may struggle just making it past the first round. However, I still see him as the 1B option in the Brown-Tatum duo. Number 10, Jaylen Brunson. If you think this ranking is too high for Brunson, just wait until your favorite team plays him a playoff series and watch him do that same pick and roll over and over and over again for 5, 6, 7 games. Sometimes in sports, not everything makes sense, and the fact that little 6-foot Jaylen Brunson, who was a second-round pick and basically let go in free agency by the Mavericks, has become one of the 10 best players in the NBA doesn't make sense to me, but I've come to accept it. He finished 5th in MVP voting last year and should have a chance to go deep into the playoffs on this new look Knicks team. My fear for Brunson is that his career won't be super long, as he plays for Tom Thibodeau and has these tough minutes he plays every single night. If you look at little guards, they tend to fall off a cliff once they reach a certain point in their career, and I fear that could happen to Brunson. But these next few years on a very talented team with Towns, Bridges, and Anunoby is his chance to capitalize. Number 9, Steph Curry. If you just look at his stats and the Warriors' place in the NBA standings right now, Steph Curry probably doesn't deserve to be in the top 10 on this list. His points per game and minutes per game average are the lowest they've been in over a decade, but there's a couple reasons I put him at the number 9 spot. No player gets more attention drawn to them when they don't have the ball, and it creates a lot of options for the Warriors' offense, with everyone having to chase Steph Curry around for every minute that he's out there. And he's shown time and time again he's the number 1 guy you want with the ball in his hands for a game-tying shot, as he's shown in the Olympics and also on Christmas Day, even in a loss. Number 8, LeBron James. Have the Lakers been a good regular season team the past few years? No. Does LeBron play much defense anymore? No. Is he averaging the lowest points per game since his rookie year? Yes. But yet, I still have him at number 8, and that's one of the amazing things about LeBron James. He still has that passing, and that's going nowhere anytime soon. He has the highest basketball IQ of anyone I've ever seen, and he's created himself into an even better three-point shooter, shooting over 40% this year and last year. I know he's not the same guy that ruled the East for all those years, but even at 40 years old, this version of LeBron James is still one of the 10 best players in the league. Number 7, Anthony Edwards. So I'm not selling any Anthony Edwards stock based off what happened the first half of the season. Last year in the playoffs, everyone was comparing this guy to Michael Jordan and saying he was the next big superstar of the NBA, and now everyone loves to hate on him for shooting too much threes and not taking it to the hoop enough. If you look at his shooting splits, he's actually shooting 43% from deep on almost 10 attempts a game, which is ridiculous. Now watching it live, you would like Ant to capitalize on that athleticism and go to the hoop more, give us more highlight reel dunks and things of that nature. But he's still only 23 years old and growing as a basketball player. You can't knock him that his organization traded away his co-star just to save some money along the way. Speaking of settling for too much threes, number 6, Jayson Tatum. So, say what you want about him, call him corny, whatever, Jayson Tatum's the champ now. Jaylen Brown did go home with Finals MVP, but I feel like Jayson Tatum should have got it, and he's the number 1 option. As you can see how defenses play the Celtics, and Tatum is the one that usually draws more attention from the defense. This is a guy with all the physical gifts, and is a really underrated rebounder, and can be a big and a small ball lineup. He's averaging career highs in rebounds and assists per game with 9.3 rebounds and 5.4 assists. The Celtics seem to be on a bit of a championship hangover, but it's a good bet to say that we'll be hearing from Tatum late in the postseason. Number 5, Victor Wembanyama. Wemby's already one of the 5 best players in the league, and he won't be losing that title for a long time as long as he stays healthy. It's hard to argue he's not the best defensive player in basketball and clear frontrunner for Defensive Player of the Year. When you watch games and see the way that guys play when Wemby's lurking there in the paint, it's almost like you're playing basketball against someone with 2 broomsticks for arms that can just swat your shot out of the air at any time. Like a lot of players in the NBA, he's accused of shooting too much threes, but if he can master that and get above 40%, it's pretty much unstoppable because not many people are going to be able to block a 7'4" guy out on the perimeter. Whether the Spurs can make the playoffs or not is left to be seen, but the eye test certainly says Wemby's top 5 in the league. Number 4, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So don't get me wrong, SGA is clearly the frontrunner for MVP right now, and I think he deserves to win that award and probably will. The crazy thing about this year being the coming out party for SGA is that he's pretty much doing the exact same thing he's done the past 2 years, just the rest of this Thunder team has come along with them and with their new additions. Shai is probably the most consistent player in the NBA. It never seems like he has a bad game, and it always seems like he's good for 25 points a night at least. It also seems so effortless for him. He always gets to the spots he wants and never seems like he's working too hard out there. I just can't put him above the top 3 guys until he has a deep postseason run with a lot of dominant performances. Number 3, Luka Donic. I considered myself a bit of a Luka hater for a long period of time until last year in that postseason run that changed a lot of people's minds. The things I couldn't stand about Doncic was his lack of effort off the ball and his turnstile defense. But as he was making that run with the Mavericks when they went to the finals last year, I found myself super excited to watch Luka every night and just marveling at the things that he could do on the offensive end. There's still some concerns I have with him, like can he stop arguing with the refs about every call? Can he get in good shape and not have so much little tiny nagging injuries? It's going to be tough for him the rest of the way with the year SGA and OKC are having, but as long as Luka's healthy, you have a chance. Number 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now I know not everyone's a fan of the in-season tournament, but it was definitely fun watching Giannis in kind of meaningful basketball games again. The last 2 years have been postseasons to forget for Giannis and the Bucks. Last year, he didn't play any games at all in that Indiana series, and the year before was coming back from injury against the Heat after getting hurt in Game 1, and was really never the same in that series to make an impact. So you throw out those 2 years and you look at the 2 postseasons before that. The year before, that 21-22 season, they did lose to the Celtics in the second round, but Giannis pretty much put up a 32, 14, and 7 throughout the first 2 rounds of the playoff series. And the year before that was his finals MVP run, where he looked like one of the greatest players we've ever seen in the history of the game. He has some limitations on offense due to his lack of shooting, but he's still the most physically imposing force in the game today. Number 1, Nikola Jokic. At the time I'm recording this video, Jokic is averaging 30.1 points per game, 13.2 rebounds, and 9.9 assists so far this season. Most people either have him or SGA as the MVP frontrunner, which means he's on pace for his 5th straight top 2 finish for the award. It hasn't even been 2 years since Jokic led the Nuggets to the 23 NBA Finals, winning Finals MVP and looking like they were about to start a new NBA dynasty. While the Nuggets have steadily lost role players, making them worse, Jokic's role has kind of changed in this year. They're counting on him to score more, and he stepped up, scoring 30 points per game and shooting a ridiculous 47% from 3. But I don't think this is the best version of Jokic. When the Nuggets won that title 2 years ago, he did his best when he was just getting triple doubles and not even scoring all that much. He only averaged 24 points per game that year. Since 2018, he's put up 132 triple doubles, and the Nuggets won 78% of those games. I know stats can be deceiving, but if you actually watch Jokic, you can see that it's not just empty stats he's putting up, but that every action he does on a basketball court does lead to his team's success. If we were redrafting the NBA and I had to pick one player that would give me the best chance of winning a title this year, the player would have to be Nikola Jokic. If you made it this far, you're probably my brother Ian, or you fell asleep with this video playing in the background. But either way, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment down below where you agree and disagree with my list, and see you next time.